Good. Thank you. We all got it. All right. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. I'm really happy to see so many people here today. Among other things, to celebrate Founders Award winners and to learn about the innovative ways that villages are incorporating or collaborating with younger generations. Actually, let me quickly introduce Mary Ellis, Mary Ellis Bowler from Arlington, who is our technical guru today. And so you'll hear her helpful voice from time to time. And as you heard, she has power over your mute button. So you better be nice to her. And she'll be giving you instructions later on about joining the breakout rooms. So as you saw, we are recording this and we hope to have it posted within a few days, along with the recordings from the breakout sessions. And we'll send out a notice when it's ready. So agenda, please. Next slide. So as you can see, it is a really full program. And after we do our Founders Awards, we're going to hear from some villages that are doing both multi-generational activities or are fully multi-generational themselves. This is increasingly important as our villages are more fully incorporated into their communities, and they want to either collaborate with or cooperate with or incorporate other younger populations. So we're looking forward to that. And I do want to remind you that the meeting will adjourn right after those breakout sessions. So next slide, please. So we're going to move right on into the Founders Award. We are really so happy to be able to again offer the Founders Award for Village Excellence. The purpose of the award is to promote and spotlight great village programs or services that are outstanding examples of villages' contributions to the well-being of older adults in their communities and projects or services that can inspire other villages. The award criteria specified that nominated projects should reflect the founders' values, which include inclusivity, collaboration, creative problem solving, positive impact on villages and their communities, and the larger village movement. The first award last year was funded entirely by Virginia Hodgkinson, the sole Living Wave founder, who founded this over 10 years ago with Miriam Kelty, the late Miriam Kelty of Bannockburn. And oh, now my golly, now you're seeing my senior memory because I'm forgetting the name of the man who was one of the founders from DC. And I feel badly about that. And this year's award is co-funded by Virginia again and by current Wave board members. One award is given to a village with an annual operating budget of under $25,000, and one award goes to a village with an annual budget of $25,000 or more. Each award comes with a $1,000 prize and bragging rights, as well as opportunities to share lessons learned with other villages and organizations, and we'll be hearing from them now. So drum roll, please, and the next slide. Okay. Well, I'm really pleased to announce that the Founders Award for a village with a budget under $25,000 goes to Bradley Hills Village in Bethesda. Betsy Carrier has been a driving force not only in her own village, but in projects across Montgomery County. And I know that she has a team that she's going to be referencing today. Their Everything Green project used the out of doors and nature as an organizing theme for multiple activities. Betsy, I'm happy to virtually present you. I keep thinking of the old Publishers Clearinghouse, you know, when they have this giant, check like that they'd stand up and hold. Maybe next year we'll have that as a prop. Anyway, it's a virtual $1,000 check. And we'd love for you to tell us about your project and your team. Go ahead, Betsy.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. And Kate, so I hope next year there might be an award for villagers using technology, and I'll be on the observing end of that. So thank you so much for the award. It is quite an honor on behalf of Bradley Hills Village to be receiving the award. I'm here with Kate Smith, who is our administrator. And first, I'd like to show you this picture, which is really the centerfold of our project, Everything Green. It is a beautiful triangle garden located in our neighborhood that our village lovingly restored as part of our Everything Green project. So next slide, please, Kate. So who is Bradley Hills Village? We are, I think, one of the few intergenerational villages in Montgomery County. And I know later this morning, you're going to be talking about intergenerational activities. And I hope we have some things to share on that topic. We're a small village. We have, but we're growing and mighty. We have about 70 members. And it's hard to believe that next year we'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary. And I guess I've been here since the beginning. I'm one of the co-founders, and we're located in the neighborhood right behind Suburban Hospital. We don't have any businesses other than Suburban in our village area. And there are probably about 600 homes in the whole catchment area of our village. Next slide, please, Kate. So this activity really took a village to create. There are 10 people who really emerged as passionate leaders of these projects that I'll tell you a little bit more about. And on the slide, you'll see who those leaders were. And there were many committed village members who really made this these projects work. And I would really be very remiss if I didn't mention that this project is inspired by and in memory of Ava Cohen, who is one of our co-founders. And I'm sure many of you remember Ava's extraordinary interest and knowledge about villages. Next slide, please, Kate. So what was the idea about this project? In 2022, and really starting a bit earlier during the early days of COVID, the Everything Green project used the out of doors and nature as an organizing theme. The activities really grew in an organic way that increased member engagement, attracted new members, reduced social isolation, and brought neighbors and members together to care for the community. Next slide, please. What did we do? What was this project about? It really had 4 activities that took place, and they really have overlapped each other in some wonderful ways. The first thing was that garden I showed you in the first slide. And we sort of brought back to life a little triangle garden. We were very fortunate to have as a member someone who was finishing up her Master Gardener certificate. And she took this garden on as a project and was able to pull together several, up to probably about a half a dozen village members who in growing seasons came together twice a month on Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 to tend this garden and plant native plants. And through the sweat and the blisters, beautiful friendships grew as well as beautiful plants. So that was one of the projects that was part of this initiative. Also, there was a special interest group that was launched in 2022, very interested, concerned, and passionate members who learned about environmental issues that affected both our neighborhood as well as our larger community. Just last week, this interest group had a walk along the canal, picking up trash in celebration of Earth Day. We had one other group that planned walks in the neighborhood to get exercise. They planned neighborhood garden tours and outdoor events that include visits to places like Brookside Gardens and Glenstone. So all of these activities were focused on the out of doors. And then our Bradley Hills Village Book Group, which is our longest standing village activity, read several books about nature, and we're very interested in nature and things that we're green. Next slide, please, Kate. So what was achieved? this project is really a very wonderful grassroots community-based initiative that had strong both volunteer leadership and reflected interests of village members. It has allowed village members to be community stewards and really live in a neighborhood that supports aging in place. Next slide. What's next? It's really these projects taken together really have formed a foundation for many of our village activities, have reminded and reunited members about how much they can learn from one another. These projects have helped us grow membership. We really estimate that this project helped us retain some members and attract new members. And most importantly, it has identified leaders. New leaders have emerged, and from these activities, we've recruited several board members, and we've built a community of engaged members who see themselves as having a very positive impact on their community. I think that's the last slide I have. I'd be glad to answer questions if we have time, and I hope we're going to have, I think, an opportunity at some future WAVE meeting to talk a little bit more about this project. But we see ourselves as pollinators and have lots of ideas how we can extend and further these projects with the Founders Awards. So again, many thanks to WAVE, and thank you again.
Betsy, thank you. And I wanted to, no, back, yeah, you can leave that up for a minute. We will have ample time for people to join your breakout session, and where there will be a facilitated discussion and extra Q's and A's. So I do encourage people to join that group if you want to learn about Betsy's project. And we will be reminding you of those breakout groups a little bit later, so you can make your choice then. And by the way, I love your phrase that you see yourself as pollinators. That is such a lovely play on words and so appropriate. So a charming choice indeed. Okay, another drum roll, please, on the next slide. Da-da-da-da-da. Okay, and I am very pleased to announce that the Founders Award for a village with a budget over $25,000 goes to Kingdom Care Senior Village in Washington, D.C. Kingdom Care and this project are led by Kathy Pointer. She's an extraordinarily dedicated and skilled in supporting older adults, not only in her village, but across the city. Their Age in Place DC is a 9-month pilot designed to fill the gap between DC's African-American older adults and access to villages. Kathy, I'm very happy to virtually present you with a $1,000 check. And please tell us about your project and your team.
Well, thank you, Mary Jo. My internet looks to be a little unstable, so I hope that you can hear me this morning. But thank you so much. So happy to be here this morning. Many of you we've talked to and shared this project with before, but we're very pleased for the support for Age in Place DC. And I have to really give a great big thank you to the DC Villages, the collaborative now. We're an official collaborative. And I see some of my colleagues this morning, Ms. Ava Lucero from DuPont Circle, Denise Snyder. Denise, I thought I saw you on there. And I think I saw Lynn from Georgetown Village, as well as all the other 12 villages, though, were very instrumental in supporting this effort. We've been privileged, I think, as a collaborative to really come together and look at issues across the city and not just specifically in our neighborhoods or in our own villages. And one of the issues that just kind of came up was the need to look at diversity, equity, and inclusion when it comes to villages. So we collectively started talking about, well, how can we reach into communities of color and really offer the village model on some level to communities who were not yet participating in the village concept or had access to villages. And had the opportunity to develop this concept, which I call it again, Age in Place DC. And we worked with just communities of faith across the city, There are 8 wards in the city, and we worked with 6 of the 8 where we had houses of worship and ambassadors. We had identified one person in each ward in those houses of faith in those churches to really push village services to not just their congregants, but seniors in their communities. And that's, again, was really important to us, that we just reach seniors across the city. And this happened right when we were in the midst of COVID. So it's really a way to reach seniors that were isolated, seniors that would not be coming out, afraid to come out, concerned about coming out, engaging with others at this time. But because we connected through the church, through the house of worship, it was somewhere they were comfortable with, people they already knew that they could engage with, and it worked extremely well. And we're very pleased with the outcomes of Age in Place DC. Through the activity, we did track our data, and we were able just recently to testify before council and share some of our data in terms of the number of seniors we were able to touch, the number of services we were able to offer to seniors as a part of Age in Place DC, because as villages, you know, there are things we can do, but there are things that seniors need that are beyond our capacity and our expertise to handle. So a part of that was that we partnered with the Department of Aging and Community Living, and we were able to refer 89 seniors to the district government, who then provided more robust services, more extended services, things again we could not offer. So we are very pleased again with the outcome. And again, I have to say thank you to all of my colleagues. And what that has resulted in as well is round 2 of Age in Place that I'm so pleased about. So we're gearing up and working now. So I'm very interested in looking at what September will look like in terms of our data. But again, thank you to WAVE for the acknowledgement and the award. And thank you to the DC Villages Collaborative. We appreciate the support. Thank you, Mary Jo.
Well, thank you, Kathy. And again, there'll be a time in the breakout sessions when folks can learn more about these projects. And yes, indeed, getting back to Betsy's point, we will schedule separate Zoom sessions on these projects, so that if you want to really dive more deeply into them, well, you'll have that chance, and we'll let you know when those are scheduled. Okay, well, again, thanks and congratulations to both our winners. You are really very impressive and inspiring, and even you too, Kathy, can be a pollinator. Next slide, please. There we go. So I wanted to remind you that WAVE has a mentoring and mutual support program that offers several types of services. And, you know, I think that this program reflects the wonderful sentiments of one of my old favorite songs, and I'm really dating myself. We all need somebody to lean on. You remember the refrain? You just call on me when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. So please don't hesitate to sign up to either ask for or offer to help. You never know when these roles will be reversed. Carolyn Rourke leads this program for us, and I thought maybe she could just give a few more details and give you an idea of the types of things that we can do for you and that you may be able to do for somebody else. Carolyn? Are you on mute?
Unmute myself. Thank you, Mary Jo. The one-on-one coaching program really is indeed an excellent example of villages helping villages. We are able to provide through a core of, I believe, 8 volunteer mentors now. We can provide one-on-one coaching and guidance to both startup and operational villages who might have a particular issue that they want to delve into for advice and counsel. And it could be any kind of topic, including board structure and dynamics of board interactions, or volunteer engagement and recognition, any issues having to do with recruiting and retaining members, lots of opportunities to provide guidance for startup villages. So I would advise any member village of Wave to take advantage of this program, and you can find the form for requesting the mentoring program on our website at wavevillages.org.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next slide, please. Okay. We got out and noticed, I think it was late last week, about a logo competition. You can see that Wave really likes to have competitions and give out money, even if it's not very much money. So it really is time to refresh our logo. The old one was created with loving hands by some people many years ago, and we'd like to really sort of refresh it and help it really reflect our mission and our purpose. We want to use it not only on our website. You'll notice our website currently, is using the old logo, but on other communications as well. And so there are more guidance in the notice that we send out, and we'll send it out again. We want to get submissions for both the graphic elements and maybe a new tagline. And there's guidance on what we mean by that in that notice as well. So we do hope to hear from you. Please get out your pens and pencils and colored paints and magic markers. And if you had, maybe this is a good time for one of you to try DAL-E, the artificial intelligence graphics program. Talk into it, all the material that we gave you about who we are and what we do, and see if it'll design something for us. How's that? If you have that kind of talent. So again, we'd like to hear from you by June 23rd. And we may split the prize if we'd like one tagline and another logo, although obviously they'd have to fit together in the end. And you can email me personally with any questions, but we will be sending out a reminder about that to give you more guidance on what to do. And I personally couldn't create anything graphic if my life depended on it. So I'm hoping to hear from a lot of you. Okay, next slide, please. Mark your calendars. Here's what we have so far. Chris Palmer is going to be leading the second and third of his workshops on developing programs on aging, dying, and death. There's one on May 4th and one on June 8th. You can register for those online, please do. Also, you may know that those workshops are very explicitly offered, not so much for individuals, although individuals are welcome to learn about it, but it's especially for villages who might want to start offering programs on any of the array of activities and projects that go into planning to lead a meaningful, quality life up to the end. And so, and then that will culminate in our offering the Finishing Strong Award, which Chris Palmer and his wife have funded to the tune of $5,000, which will open next fall. So we really want to prepare villages to prepare to take advantage of this opportunity to begin to explore these issues and help their participants explore these issues. Our next quarterly meeting will be July 19th, and to be determined. And the first in-person meeting in, oh my golly, 4 years will happen on October 17th. The Silver Spring Civic Center. So please for that. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Seal Garrett now, our really terrific program chairperson. The next slide, please. And Seal is the executive director for At Home in Alexandria, and she's going to introduce our panel.
All right. Thank you, Mary Jo. So yeah, here's how we will spend the next, I guess, hour or so as we move into a discussion about multi-generational activities. And I am really very happy to welcome our panelists, Kate Smith, Leo Sanchez, Doug Gaddis, Noel Durman, Kianyofu Blumwingo, and Abby Sims. And I want to mention that we know that there are lots of other great things going on in addition to what these 6 speakers will be talking about. So we'll have a chance to share that in the breakout rooms and talk a little bit more informally and share some ideas that we're trying and ask questions of one another. So this is not the sum total, we know that, but we thought it might be a good start to hear from some villages, large and small, about what they're doing. And I want to mention that we wanted to have Greater Stonegate Village join us. They're doing some really terrific things, and they just were not able to have someone here today, just with scheduling problems. But we'll have another opportunity to dive into this topic again in the future. But for now, let's go ahead and hear from our speakers. Here's what we'll do: we'll give each person 10 minutes, and I'll try to be the best timekeeper I can be and nudge people gently. And we'll have a little time for questions here, just depending on how long it takes each person to talk about their project. But I don't want anyone to feel rushed, and we will have a chance to ask questions, like I say, in the breakout rooms. So let's stop talk and seal, and let's get on to our first presenter, who is Kate Smith from Bradley Hills Village. We've already heard about some great things they're doing at Bradley Hills Village. And here we go again. So Kate, you go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm back. Thank you again for that award. And it's nice to be here with everybody. Quick, Bradley Hills Village is in Montgomery County, and I am the executive director part-time. And we are an intergenerational village, so we are always looking for ways to interact with.
Does it bother you that the sound is on?
No,
Because
I'll be leaving in a few minutes, so you're good.
Everyone can hear me though? Okay. So yeah, in trying to find ways to interact with school-age children, we are constantly talking and trying to engage our neighborhood. So before I get to the full, what the sort of culminating thing that happened this past a couple months ago, I kind of need to walk us through that. We do have members who are mobile, but they are still they still are hesitant to meet in person in closed spaces. So as Betsy mentioned, we started a walking group this past fall, and we sent an events person team into the walking group to walk with them to get an idea of sort of ideas of what they're curious about, what they're interested in, and really who they are. From that walking group, we found some members with some really interesting stories. Two members, husband and wife, had both lived in a Japanese internment camp in Wyoming. And that the way they were able to engage, tell a story, was really what motivated us to, in programming, start a storytelling group over the winter. So as it became cold and we weren't going to walk as much, we started once a month to host a storytelling class. That storytelling class was for people who had started a memoir, people who were just, telling vignettes, people who were practicing oral telling of stories, and lots of our members just came to listen to the stories. From there, we went back to our events group and trying to figure out how we can engage them this intergenerationally. And it just so happens, and here we're coming up to the intergenerational piece, that my son, who's in 6th grade, is reading They Call Us Enemy. And that is a graphic novel about a Japanese boy in an internment camp. So I reached out to that member to see if he would be interested in engaging with this group of 6th grade boys. And he was very eager to talk with them. And so here's the storytelling piece. I asked the students or the teacher to come up with a list of questions, because I knew we weren't going to be able to meet in person and this was going to be a little clumsy on Zoom. So he and the students generated probably about 25 questions that the students would be curious to hear about. And I brought that back to the presenter, the speaker, and he was able to weave a story together. How can I tell a story using all these questions? When the time came, the students sort of gathered in their classrooms and we put them onto a big projector in the front, and he told a 30-minute story. And I think for the students, it was probably more beneficial because here's a big speaker in the middle of a classroom. For him, he is kind of talking to a screen. And so that left me feeling like, oh, we could probably tweak that a little bit. And so the follow-up to that was the teacher asked the students to write a reflection about what they learned in this engaging, this story that they had told. And they were able to write thank you notes that expounded on how their perception had changed, what they had learned, how it connected to the book they were reading. I collected all those thank you notes and delivered about 50 thank you notes with really, really nice reflections to those students, to the speaker. So this isn't this is a different type of engagement piece, but just to wrap up, I think there's two things that would have to happen to move forward as this a program. We would need to find ways for our members to share stories and to document them, you know, with some place where, you know, common themes and common stories would be housed. And we would need to find schools that are interested in partnering. This took me no more than 2 hours from start to finish, including the 30-minute storytelling. So it wasn't a heavy lift at all. It's really, Zoom made it very easy. If there was in person, it would have taken longer. And you don't have to limit this to local schools. You can, but you can connect on Zoom anywhere. So I think it was, 80 students got to hear from one speaker, one person about their story live from an internment camp. And I think that was pretty meaningful. I've reached out to a history teacher who's interested in this, and I've talked to an English teacher in a local county school who would be interested in knowing more speakers that would be willing to share stories. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Kate. What we're going to do is take down the slides so that we can see each speaker, because I pinned you, and now I'm going to unpin you and move on to the next speaker, unless we have a little time. So do we have any questions for Kate? I love that project. You know, I've had members who really they have stories to tell, and it's just hard to know how to make the connection. You know, they have a particular experience, and sometimes the connections are happenstance, but that's the hardest part is, you know, these great ideas are there, just don't really know how to make it happen. So I'd like to talk, if not now, at least in the breakout, about how we can figure out a pathway to finding these connections while we still, you know.
Christy was asking, these were 6th grade students. Full disclosure, we've been working with, my husband works at the school. So I've had, you know, I was able to have a quick contact into that teacher's classroom. So that made it much easier. But it is, and somebody else said it reminds me of the Moth Radio Hour. I agree. And I think that was another important feature is that, you know, getting someone practiced in telling a story or writing their story and willing to share the story makes it for a more engaging interaction with students and kids.
You know, those kids are going to remember that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they will remember that guest. Yeah, that's.
You know,
Yeah,
this
Jenna
Mary
Jones says, or maybe like StoryCorps on NPR. Exactly.
This is Mary Jo, and I wanted to mention that actually learning to interview people is a good career skill, not just a social skill, because there are many areas in communication and elsewhere where learning to be a good interviewer and learning to not drive the conversation, but to really listen and extract the information is very good. In fact, I will say that my PhD was based on oral history. And so, I mean, you can do this academically too. And so it's a good start for these young people to not only appreciate the elders in their community, but to see how interesting it is to learn from people and to have this extra skill.
Yeah, and I think I think that well, I'm drawing a blank on Library of Congress. It's still doing the project where they will accept interviews, however, homemade they might be, interviews done with World War II vets. And so I think teenagers can do those and just submit them to the library, and they will, create a way where they can be, stored properly and all that. It's just making the connections is the piece that takes some time. Betsy, did you want to comment? You might
Right,
have been
yeah,
involved in the project.
thanks, Tia. I just wanted to echo what Kate shared, because I think this couple, they were in an internment camp when they were children, and they have the most incredible and moving stories. And these are stories that these students won't be able to hear for too much longer. They really, it's worth pages and pages and books to hear the stories that these folks had to offer. So it's an incredible opportunity for these students.
Thank you. You're exactly right. We, in my village, we have a member who was born in a German prison. And I mean, what a story he has. His entire life is an interesting story, but we got to get these stories out there while these folks are here. Barbara Sullivan put a great link in the chat. Everybody check that out while we're on this topic. And Jenna, I see your question. I'm going to hold off on it if we may, just so we can move on to the other speakers. But I appreciate the thematic, point of your question. Roy, I don't know if you have a question related to this particular project before we move on.
Yes, I do. I have two experiences with internment camps that were very personal. When I was about 5 years old, I was born in Laredo, Texas, on the border to Mexico, and we were out playing in a play yard next to the railroad tracks, and I saw a bunch of little Japanese children about my age running along the high link fence. And I asked my father, what are these little children doing there? They only spoke Spanish. That was all right with me because I spoke Spanish. But what had happened, Franklin Roosevelt had authorized special agents to go down into Latin America and kidnap all of these Japanese immigrants and bring them to the United States to an internment camp at Crystal City, Texas. I never thought about it anymore until about 5 years ago. PBS had a special called The Train to Crystal City, and it gave the whole story about how we went down into Latin America and captured all of these Japanese families. We brought the whole families up. And then after I graduated from college, my very best friend had been a prisoner as a child in the Dachau prisoner of war camp in Germany. About 10 years ago, I went to visit it. It took me 2 days to recover from seeing what I saw. Thank you for letting me share that with you.
Thank you, Roy. Appreciate that. We got him recorded. Let's send it to Library of Congress. All right, it's on you, Doug. I'm just kidding. Thank you so much, Roy. Well, we will, maybe another conversation will come of this about how we can really mobilize some kind of effort in this. I mean, there's a great idea here. So
Yeah, this
further
could
discussion on this.
be a
for sure.
depository of stories that are for telling.
Yeah.
It could be helpful.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. All right. Good. Well, we will move on just in the interest of time, and the village representative we will hear from next is Leo Sanchez. And I will go ahead and let you, Leo, talk about some of the things you've done. I know the way that your village is set up is a little bit different, so you can explain the different groups. And I think regardless of how our villages are set up, there are lessons to be learned from all of us. So Leo, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Can you see me okay? Can you hear me all right?
Sure can.
Okay, great. Kate, that's a great program. My gosh, it's a hard act to follow, I'll tell you. My experience, I am with a village in DC, Mount Pleasant Village, and we are an all volunteer village, which is a little bit different from some of the other business models in the area. And it's important to understand our intergenerational aspect is not necessarily deliberate. So mine is a more anecdotal story about how we ended up engaging in one area with younger folks. And so Mount Pleasant was struggling with how do we engage inactive members in our village? So what the leadership decided to do was to create what we call clusters. And it would be similar to having block captains, but the leadership decided not to use the word block captain because that sounded a little bit too Soviet era type of thinking. So we called them cluster coordinators. Now, the clusters in the village were basically designed around street blocks. And the idea was that the cluster coordinator would reach out to members who we knew were on the rolls and find out what is the village doing or not doing that can get you more engaged and active. We have all these programs and blah, blah, blah. So it was kind of like a more personal way to reach out. There's about 200 members in Mount Pleasant, and that has been fairly steady. We have had some increase. So that this was all pre-COVID, almost right before COVID came out and resulted in the quarantining and all of that. So we were already on that mission. We had assigned cluster coordinators to the area. We had blocks defined, yada, yada, yada. Then COVID hits. After COVID hit, the ANC decided to try and figure out how to help the members in Mount Pleasant who were aging, not necessarily associated with the village, but just in Mount Pleasant neighborhood. How can we reach out to find out anybody that might feel isolated, that might need help getting groceries, going to the pharmacy, blah, blah, blah. So the ANC had a separate effort going on in a program they called Neighbors Helping Neighbors. The Neighbors Helping Neighbors project also divided themselves up by blocks in certain areas in the neighborhood. So then once we found out that there were these dual efforts going on, we decided to overlay the Neighbors Helping Neighbors when the ANC coordinator was trying to figure out how to set up the Neighbors Helping Neighbors groups. We said, why don't you follow the lines of the clusters that Mount Pleasant has already set up? So that's how it started to work. Now, the people that signed up for Neighbors Helping Neighbors were generally younger people. And like I say, they were interested in helping the older folks with, getting groceries and going to the pharmacy and that sort of thing. So an initial meeting was held on Zoom, and I was the cluster coordinator for what we call the Bancroft cluster. So when I had that initial meeting, my cluster members showed up and people that were from Neighbors Helping Neighbors showed up. And it was basically a getting acquainted so that we know who is trying to help us, right? Ask for assistance. So at the end of that meeting, that maybe lasted, 20 minutes, half an hour max, I asked, do you guys want to continue to meet? And the answer was that they did. So I didn't have any objection to, it's pretty easy to set up a Zoom call, and we continued to meet. As COVID went along, nobody was asking for assistance. Well, I don't say nobody, but it was a very small, folks were not asking for a lot of support with respect to assistance in going to the grocery store, going to doctor's appointments, trying to get groceries, that sort of thing. But what did happen is in our meetings, in our Zoom meetings, we would have a check-in. And in that check-in, with the young people included, there's a group house that's in our cluster. And they were younger folks in this group house. And they started talking about how they were going to be having dinner and that they like to have a different kind of meal that is more international based on whatever it is they're eating, blah, blah, blah. So this becomes a topic of interest because we're all foodies in our group. So then we started talking about, well, we should have a potluck as soon as COVID is over so that we can get together and yada, yada, yada. And then that started to happen. And once that personal connection was made to the younger people, to have a potluck and then have, all these different fabulous foods brought to, I ended up hosting that at my house. It was just a phenomenal way of bringing people together that were from different generations. So in terms of what did we learn with respect to that, it was, I think that we had to communicate a sense of belonging to the people that were in the cluster. It had to be based on, personal relationships that started to get the interest of the folks that ended up coming. And it has to be done, one person at a time. Let me think, I'm looking at my notes here. And we have actually done this now. We've gathered together in person for these events at least twice since we have been able to be around each other again. And it has just been a really wonderful experience. I would also mention that Mount Pleasant also has a youth corps that's associated with the village, but those are more for like high school kids, and they might, do services like rake leaves for some of the neighbors or whatever. And it's a little bit different, the youth corps, from the engagement of the younger folks in the neighborhood. An example of how they use the youth corps is at our annual picnic. It is the youth corps that facilitates the games for the younger children that are members of the village. And so that seems to work. Mount Pleasant is changing a lot in recent years, and there's a lot of younger families. And I think one of the things that our village is struggling with is how do we make the connection to these younger families and get interest in them to join the village. So Kate's example is a great idea to do this. We're probably going to have to go back and do some brainstorming of our own to figure out how to make that happen. But I think that's a great idea. But that is basically, and then I think we need to figure out how to be more deliberate in reaching out to the younger families, because some of their interests are a little bit different than a person that's aging in place. But what we have, and I know we're not unique in this way, we have a bunch of septenarians, people that are in their 70s that make up the village, and they rather than asking for help, they want to help. So that has been, we've studied that, we've done surveys, and that seems to be pretty consistent with the folks that live here. There's a lot of people, with respect to Kate's example about the storytelling, there's a lot of, I call them like aging hippies that are still very socially conscious and want to figure out how to help people, but they see themselves as very independent and therefore don't need the help, but they are the ones that are willing to help others. So we need to figure out a way to make that happen. There's also a lot of people in our village that are former Peace Corps volunteers. There's a lot of folks. And I imagine when you look at, consider that, there's a lot of great stories about their lives overseas and that kind of thing. And that, I don't know why we ended up having so many folks like that in our neighborhood, because Mount Pleasant as a place, I don't know if you remember in the early 90s when they had the so-called riots here with the Latinos. So there was a connection of Latino people here in Mount Pleasant that probably goes back to the early days when the embassies, the Latin American embassies, went up 16th Street, and then they just kind of settled around in this neighborhood. And then we became a pocket of Latino people that lived in Mount Pleasant. In fact, there's been a documentary about that particular event that happened in the early 90s called La Mount Pleasant. But we're kind of losing that connection to the in the neighborhood to the Latin American community. But if you go on Mount Pleasant Street, the bodegas are still there. There's a lot of folks that are of Latin descent that gather there. It's kind of like what happened to Chinatown in downtown Washington, that maybe there's a restaurant or two that is left there and there's the gate, but nobody that is of Asian descent lives around Chinatown anymore. So that's kind of what the things that we're struggling with right now. And I just wanted to share that news with you in terms of an anecdotal way. So we're still at early stages of trying to get with this multi-generational aspect. So, but we think it's happening, and we just have to figure out how to fine tune it.
Great. Leo, thank you so much. I think because we do need to move on, if we can hold questions for Leo for the breakout room, because I want to give a chance for our other speakers to talk. Leo, thank you so much. I think there's a whole lot to glean here.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask our next speaker, Kianyofu Mlwengo from Brookland Village, to share some things that you're doing at your village. We were so happy to have Brookland here because a lot of we really wanted to include them, but a lot of the leaders of that village had other obligations today. So we were really happy to snatch you up. So thank you for joining us today, and please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. So yes, my name is Kinyofu Mwingo, and I'm the community organizer. I started almost a year ago. The Brookland Intergenerational Village started in just before the pandemic. And so it was started by Emma Brownstein, who is a 30-something-year-old, and her interest was in getting neighbors to connect with other neighbors. So she outreached and formed a board, and then COVID hit. So they went and did the infrastructure. They had just before COVID, they had a big introduction to the community, which was well received. And so they got some members, maybe 20 members or so, 10 to 20 members, and then COVID. So it kind of went underground. So when I joined, it was to bring it out into the open, myself and Nadia Mercer, who is the executive director. And so we have the logo, the motto that we have claimed as neighbors helping neighbors. And we want to have the neighbors develop relationships with each other. So we have, we've also wanted to have, the goal was also to have like 50-50 representation between the younger folks, quote unquote, younger folks, with the older folks. And we're at that now. That's represented in the board and in our membership. We have about a little bit over 50 members right now. We have a wide variety of workshops, and some of them are on Zoom and some of them are in person. So for and a lot of them are intergenerational in the aspect of how they are set up. So we recently had a conversation with one of our members a couple of our members actually, who was struggling with their smartphone. So we found someone to have a smartphone workshop, and that person is in the younger aspect of the age experience. We've had outdoor events and indoor events. So one really fun outdoor event was a discovery in our own community of a forest patch. So one of our members is a tree enthusiast, and she was instrumental in creating this forest patch in a park that's very well used. And a lot of community members don't even know that it's there because they're just used to this big old woods experience. Anyhow, we had a walkthrough and a demonstration. It was like a mini arboretum. We've had an herb swap and medicine making workshop, and there were and members are encouraged to bring their children, or it's welcome. It's welcome that they bring their children, and so the children were sitting along with us, learning about how to make salves. And we had bird count. One of our members loves birds and has been studying them for years, and she's a part of an organization that counts them every year. So we had her do a walk through a community, a reservoir in our neighborhood. And by the way, our neighborhood is a good part of Ward 5 in DC. And we have garlic planting. There were children that were alongside of us digging dirt and sticking garlic in their earth. We have had art classes and knitting group led by an older member, and with children alongside to learn this skill, this old time skill. That's very useful. And we've had hand dancing, and we've also had Girl Scouts come to deliver Valentine's Day to the members in our community. So they were knocking on doors, and that was really cute. We've had we have fall and spring events so far. So that's where we're inviting the members, and it's a really casual experience of eating and chatting and watching the children play. And we have volunteers also. So we allow the volunteers, or we encourage volunteers to be members, and we encourage members to be volunteers. And we have quite a few seniors who are interested in volunteering. They have something to share and they want to share it. One of our members is passionate about having a tool share. So, we all buy tools, and lots of tools, they wind up sitting in our basement or our garage unused because we just needed it that one time. So his idea was to let's share, let's figure that out. So we have one of our committee members working with him to figure that out. And the Zoom workshops are more educational. So we've had cognitive decline, hearing loss, how to write, not how to write, but understanding wills, trust, and estate planning. We've had self-care, and we recently had an end-of-life doula come on and describe what that was. We've had a couple of others. It's like we try to have like 2 to 4 events a week. And so we're pretty busy. I'm complete. I guess I'm leaving space for questions, maybe.
Hold on, sorry, had to unmute myself. You do have a lot going on. I have a quick question. When you say you encourage the volunteers to be members and the members to be volunteers, it is to be a member. What does it mean? I mean, you don't have any age restriction. It's a member of the community is a member of the community. And
Yeah.
is there any fee or anything like that, or is it just a you know, a declarative, you know, there's an application, or what does it mean to?
Great question. We do have we have membership levels, two of them. One is supporting and the other one is full. So supporting members are members who want to be a part of the village and experience the activities. A full member is the member who believes that they need support in some way. And that
Right.
person could be a 30-something, you know, who is going through surgery or has some ailment or situation. So they can then reach out for volunteer support. We do have application process, and it's on our website, and it's sliding scale from $0 to $300.
Okay, got it. How many do you, I don't want to put you on the spot asking questions if you don't have the answers, and that's okay, but do you have a lot of members? Like when you look at I mean, are there very many younger members?
We have, actually, I'm going to pull out this graph that we created, which I thought was really cool. This is based on 47 members in February. There are 5, let's see, the 30 is our youngest age group. We have 9 of them. Then we have 5 40s, 5 in their 40s. We have 9 in their 50s, 9 in their 60s, and 13 in their 70s.
Wow,
Very interesting.
split.
We've
you.
got about 1 minute for questions. If anybody wants to ask something quickly before we move on, or else we will.
I think it's
Well,
nice that the young people initiated so much in.
I
Berlin.
know.
I mean,
I
that's,
agree.
they're the driving force. They weren't necessarily thinking of aging in place. They were thinking of neighbors helping neighbors or getting to know neighbors, which is not age specific at all.
Yeah, I get, of course, right.
And if I could say another, just 10 seconds, what drew me to this village is that the village, I grew up with the saying, it takes a village to raise a family. And to create it, and I grew up in a village where I would go to school, and if I did something wrong, I would hear it all the way till I got home, and then at home. Yeah.
That's wonderful. What an experience. Is someone asking a question? I don't want to miss anybody. I'm flipping from screen to screen here.
There was someone on the telephone number.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, hold on a second.
No, there wasn't somebody with a question. It was just accident.
Okay, all right. All right then. Kanyofu, thank you so much. Look forward to hearing more when we go into the breakouts. I guess right now we will move on to our next speaker, who is Doug Gaddis from Silver Spring Village. I know what project he's going to talk about. I'm excited to hear more about it. And Doug, go for it.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Seal. I'm excited to talk about this project, partly because it follows and meshes so nicely with the project that Kate was talking about. I think it has a lot of the same goals, the same outcomes, but we're just using a different medium, and that medium is film and video. So I would not characterize Silver Spring Village as an intergenerational village. But we have consistently looked for ways that we could involve all parts of the community in our village life, and that has been a challenge. Prior to the pandemic, we tried some tech afternoons where young people would come in, help our members with technology quirks and problems. But those kinds of things really, ultimately, we found that our members weren't learning much from it or retaining much from it. And it was something that just, we did it, we checked the box, but there was no lasting outcome from it. So we really wanted to try to find something else. And then, of course, the pandemic came along. So everything was, put on a back burner to deal with the necessities. As we look for projects, we are a village of over almost 275 members. We have the equivalent of 2.5 full-time staff. So we knew any project that we might want to take on has to be considered very carefully within knowing what is our capacity as staff to manage it. And so we really try to be fairly picky about what we launch. And this project, which is called Village Reels, is something that came out of a conversation between the executive director of another nonprofit and myself. And we were just batting around ideas for, what might an intergenerational activity look like that's centered around documentary making. And we really came up with a great project that includes not only the village and not only the documentary nonprofit, which is called Docs in Progress. I need to give them a shout out. But also one of our local high schools, Montgomery Blair High School, which is home to an advanced communication arts program. Working with Montgomery County schools can be a challenge because their requirements for student service learning can be very, very strict. So there are a lot of things in the village that, we always think it'd be great if we could have kids do this, but they can't get credit for it for their student learning. And the nice thing about this project, they're not getting credit for student service learning. They're getting class credits because this is part of their class in filmmaking. So they're getting a grade on this based on, the quality of their product and the effort they put into it. So there are a lot of pluses and everyone really is getting what they need out of it. The purpose really is to, from our perspective, is to engage our members in reliving events in their lives and talking about that. And also to exposing younger people to what literally is living history. And it's living history that, is disappearing rapidly, much faster than we would like. From the documentary nonprofit's perspective, this is a project in the world of arts and humanities that is very, very sexy to funders. Foundations love this, donors love this because it's combining such a variety of audiences. From the school's perspective, again, it's really a worthwhile learning experience for the kids. And they spend a lot of their time in this program doing things within their schools. So they do like a weekly television show featuring other students. But this working with our group of folks is really much more real life because they are out interviewing strangers and interacting in different ways outside their normal peer group. So that's really a healthy development. In terms of what the project actually looks like, staff choose, so every year, and this is the second year, we're right in the middle of the project. It should be finished in the next 6 weeks or so. Each year we choose 3 village members who we believe have interesting stories and ask them to participate. And we started off asking for volunteers, and like all organizations, no one volunteered. So Vanessa, who's also in this session, and I put our heads together and said, okay, who do we know that has an interesting story? And just to give you an idea of the kinds of stories we had in last year's coterie of 3 people, we had one of our members who is a lifelong professional actor. He's a winner of the Helen Hayes Award, many other awards. We have a lady who grew up in one of Maryland's historically free Black communities. It was a neighborhood for African Americans who were freed at some point in the 19th century. And her family was very involved in a strong Masonic tradition among African American men in the 20s and 30s. And the third person was one of our members whose grandfather at the outset of World War II, abandoned his family here, abandoned our member's mother, who was a child at the time, went back to Germany, became a Nazi, was ultimately caught by the Russians, and died in a German prison. And our member was unaware of this entire story, and he learned about it through one of the genealogical tests and found out why was there this strange little cluster of people with very similar genes in one German town. And it turns out it was his father's second family that was unknown to anyone. So that's to say that there just are these fascinating stories. So the documentary program, the nonprofit works with members to sort of refine their storytelling capacity. They also provide training to the students beyond what their normal weekday teachers do. We send in bios. We ask the members to complete bios and potential questions, things they'd like to talk about that. We send that to the students ahead of time. The students get several weeks to do some background research on those topics to formulate their questions. And then we do a full day of taping. That involves, and we do it in our members' homes. That's where it's most reflective of their individual personalities. And so the students come usually in teams of 2 to 4 students. We always, of course, thanks to our lovely insurance company, we always have to make sure we have, plenty of adults present as well as the kids. So you always have to think about those kinds of things. And they spend several hours talking with our members on camera, asking their questions. And then the students will go back and they will edit the videos, begin the rough edits. Frequently, they will come back to the members and they will shoot what we call B-roll, which is all of that stuff that you see in a documentary when you don't actually see the person's face talking, you just hear the voice in the background, but you're seeing other images. So the students will come back and they will photograph works of art or family photos, whatever it is that relates to that particular story. And then at the end, we celebrate by hosting a screening of the videos, and we invite, of course, the students as well as their families and teachers. We invite the village members who participated and their families, and we also invite everyone else in the village who'd like to attend. So it's a really great way of getting people involved. We found some side benefits to this. We know that when cameras are coming into the home, homeowners sometimes take a fresh look at their surroundings and they realize, ooh, maybe it's a little too cluttered and maybe I need some help with decluttering. So we've actually found that there have been some of those kinds of side benefits. The students are, first of all, they're just really great kids. They're so poised and self-confident, but this really plays on those skills. They're getting rare exposure to older adults who have fascinating stories. In terms of, lessons learned, it's all about preparation. The first year we did this last year, I will be perfectly honest and say it was a really, really rocky road. The other nonprofit had some executive transition that happened right in the middle of it. And I think we were all spinning our wheels a bit trying to figure out how do we make this work. This year, fortunately, it is going much, much better. So, be aware of that. Be aware of those things like insurance. What will it take to involve younger people with your adults? Logistics, do you have the staff support to do this? I mean, it takes one full day where all 3 of us are out doing this, and there's a lot more planning that goes into it. So you have to really think about what your capacity is. Think about personalities. This is the kind of very, very personal activity that really requires trust. It requires your members to be trusting your village staff. It requires the students to trust you. It requires your members to trust the students. So that's really, really important. And also to, any kind of project like this takes longer than you expect. For those of us who don't have children or who are old enough that we've kind of forgot that we had them in school at one point, you really aren't aware anymore of what that school calendar is. So you can find yourself thinking, oh, sure, we can wrap this project up in 6 weeks, but you forget, oh yeah, there's spring break and there's this and there's that and the other. And then if the kids are students, they get to leave school 3 or 4 weeks early. So everyone's, rushing to pull something together in May. So those are the some of the things that I think you have to think about in the background. I think that is it for me.
Thank you, Doug. Oh, boy. The clock is going here. I think we need to hold questions for the breakout. Doug, thank you so much. I'm so glad to learn more about this project. And I'd like to, extend this conversation during the breakout. We are going to swap the order a little bit just because just like to throw a wrench in things. I'm going to ask, and the speakers are okay with this, I'm going to have Abby Sims speak next, and then Noelle Derman will close out our presentations, and then we'll take a short break. We are running a little bit behind, behind schedule. If you can bear with us and let the speakers go until 5 minutes after 11, it will cut our breakout time by 5 minutes, but I just think it would be great to not have to cut anyone short and allow this extra time. So I appreciate everyone's flexibility. So Abby Sims from North Chevy Chase Connections, we very much look forward to hearing some of the things that you're doing and the great successes that you've had. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. So I am co-founder and president of North Chevy Chase Connections. Unlike some of the speakers today, and like at least one, we are intentionally a multi-generational village. We started looking at different kinds of structures. Specifically, our initial meeting, we invited Chevy Chase at Home and Bannockburn to talk to us about different kinds of structures. And there were, and it was held at our local neighborhood pool. And we did have a lot of younger members, and there was no question right from the beginning that we were going to be a multi-generational rather than a senior-only village. So I would say that right now, while seniors make up most of the members, we had at the end of last year, and we're just still counting on, we're just finishing up, believe it or not, our membership campaign for 2023. We had 140 members last year. I would say about 15 to 20% were younger members of 50 and younger. We specifically wanted to be more inclusive because our feeling was that younger families need villages as much as older people do. A number of people here were talking about connections. That is spoken in our name. I mean, that's why we picked the name, where, and the whole idea of neighbors helping neighbors. And actually, we created a kids and family interest group right from the very beginning. And that was to attract younger families, but also we thought grandparents who would be looking for activities and things to do with their grandchildren. And in many cases, we've been effective in doing that. Just following up on what Mary Jo had talked about, and I don't know how well you can see this, our logo, but I'm so glad that WAVE is thinking about doing a new logo. I don't actually know if it is showing very well, but we spent a lot of time on our logo because we wanted to express what we are. So there are 3 homes in the logo, and one has a single person with a dog. One is a more traditional family with a mother and father and 2 small children. And the third are 2 elderly people, one with a cane. And the idea was to really show right from the beginning that this is who we are. And I think that while WAVE is doing its logo, personally, as a multi-generational village, I sometimes feel like we don't fit. So I would very much appreciate if the logo that is going to be developed takes into account the variety of villages that we have. So the logo set forth, how we wanted to be so inclusive and included the different family groups. Our steering committee initially had all ages. We did a survey right up front, and we thought, our older people thought that the younger families would want a co-op for childcare and for emergency childcare. Our vision was that, you could call a neighbor and say, I'm not going to be able to meet the bus. Can you please go? Unfortunately, that didn't work out because the people didn't really know each other, and they had to get to know each other first. So that was really the goal, to create events, to create those connections and the feeling of comfort level. So pre-pandemic, we had a lot of game nights and we have a partnership with the local church, and we would have game nights and potluck dinners, and the older teens would play games with the younger kids, and they were people loved them, and families made connections they hadn't met before, play dates were made, and we were delighted with that, but unfortunately, once COVID came, we had to move on. Also pre-pandemic, we had an annual spring wine and cheese social at Nature Forward, which used to be called the Audubon Naturalist Society. And they are also a partner with us because they're in our neighborhood. And that attracted a lot of young people because we had a very elegant, basically cocktail party with an open bar. And people, again, we did it in order for people to get to know each other. A local piano teacher had her piano students playing as our entertainment and background music. We haven't reinstituted that, but we've done other outdoor activities, including an annual Halloween parade and block party, which we've done now 3 times, and we get hundreds, and I'm not kidding, hundreds of people walking through the neighborhood. We've done the parade routes a little differently. Initially, we did multiple parade routes to take into account our different zones. Leo had been talking, I think, about clusters. We call it zones with zone leaders in order to create more local connections between neighbors. And so that has been hugely successful. And also in the fall, we've done multiple times an annual fall pumpkin decorating and craft event. It's hosted by a young family in their backyard. Art activities are led by another young parent who was an art teacher. And what's good is that at that event, we can really sit down and talk with the families. And from there, we found a couple of young artists who wanted to start an artist interest group in the neighborhood. And that is relatively recent. And it's led to some events like a tour of the Montgomery County Community College Tacoma Park studio tour by the artists. And this weekend, actually, one of the artists is inviting everyone over to his home to critique his art and have a brunch. So, and that is appealing to multi-generations. Another young family is very interested in the environment and has become an official Montgomery County trash cleanup person. And so we've had multiple local park trash cleanups with young and old. The kids do some cleanup. We have some fun prizes for, the stinkiest thing you found, the heaviest thing you found, the weirdest thing you found. And we're also cleaning up our neighborhood, which is very much appreciated. And we've had outdoor musical festivals on using local musicians of all ages, and we do it on the lawn of the local church, and we offer free to everybody Italian ices or Hawaiian shaved ice, and we get about, I would say, up to about 150 people of all ages, coming to these musical fests. Monthly Zoom programs. We do a distinguished neighbor talk, and I'm definitely going to follow up with some of the ideas here about having people's stories be told. And those programs, when they are particularly geared towards the neighborhood, like the police coming and talking about crime in the neighborhood, or we have a number of archaeologists and historians in the neighborhood who talk about the background of this particular neighborhood. We get, intergenerational attendees, and also at our happy hour, which we do on Zoom right now, but we're thinking about possibly doing it in person as well. I would say that the listserv is crucial because we have a lot, our neighborhood is changing, it's going younger. A lot of new young families are moving in and they go to the listserv. We have a welcome wagon bag initiative where we drop off a very attractive bag filled with information and about what we do. And most people join the listserv. You don't have to be a member. You just need to be within our jurisdiction. And people have reached out and said, well, I'm new to the neighborhood. I have a 2-year-old. I'd love to meet people. And I see that and I connect them with leaders of the kids and family group who then follow up, and then they go and they do stuff together. So even if we don't have a specific village program scheduled, we are able to make them feel more welcome in the community and connected with someone in their peer group that for a need that they're specifically offering. I got an idea from Jerry Cooperman, I don't know if she's on this, where they had a coat drive with the local elementary school. Well, we reached out and we're actually developing a partnership with our local elementary school. Our initial move was to ourselves donate and get other people's donations into their food pantry, where they have food available for kids who need it for weekends, where they can go in and just, fill up their backpack and take home food. So, and we're also doing something in technology. We just signed an MOU. Vanessa, you've been helpful with that, with Dorot, which is a nonprofit in New York. Basically, and I know other villages in the area have done it as well, where we have started providing technology assistance, and some of our younger members are the coaches and the older members are taking advantage of it. So, and as I mentioned, we have a partnership with Nature Forward, and we have had nature tours specifically geared for kids and family that they lead, at various times during the year. So I'm really excited about being a multi-generational village, and I feel that it is providing a need that used to happen organically, where neighbors of all ages used to, get to know each other. And now it's harder to do that because we're all kind of stuck in our own silos. But it's so far so good. I mean, we're working, it is a lot of work. I don't want you to think that it comes easy. I'm constantly looking for volunteers of all ages. And we have a few leaders of the younger group on our board as well, which is incredibly helpful because I've been retired for a number of years, and you kind of, you're out of the loop of what's going on in workplaces now. So having younger members on the board who are very tuned in, who are very technologically savvy, who have helped us tremendously professionalize our communications and our website and all of that. So I'm a big advocate for it, and I hope other villages will follow suit. And I'll be in one of the breakout sessions and be willing to answer questions. Thank you so much.
Super. Abby, thank you so much. And it occurs to me that Jenna Jones, I know I didn't answer your question about, asking if any generational programs are focused on ageism. And as I've heard folks speak today, and I know we haven't answered that question, and I hope we can explore it in the breakouts. It seems to me that that will be a byproduct, maybe not the intent, but it just seems to me that those younger folks who are taking part and working and interacting with our older members are seeing it maybe in a personal way. They will feel compelled to to be sensitive to ageism when they meet these remarkable people. It may not be why you did the project you did, Abby, or anyone else, but I really hope that that is one of the outcomes of what we're doing here. But again, we can explore that in the breakouts. So now I would like to ask Noelle Derman to talk about a fun project that Arlington Neighborhood Village has done locally with some young.
Hi, everyone. I'm Noelle Derman from Arlington Neighborhood Village. Mary Alice is going to run my PowerPoint for me. I couldn't resist because I have cute pictures. So I do fundraising and special projects for ANV, and one of our special projects is this very fun Pen Pal program that we started last year with a local elementary school. So at ANV, just like all of you, we're always looking for ways to involve younger people. And I have two elementary aged kids, so I'm always have this in mind as well. And I just kind of stumbled across this idea and then did a little Googling and saw that there are multiple programs between seniors and elementary students. So I didn't have to invent anything new. I just did a little research and pulled bits and pieces from what I found and then started. So why is the Pen Pal project a good idea? Because it is a great way to create community connections. It's super, super fun. We do this with 4th and 5th graders, and that age group, 10, 11, they're just a lot of fun. They're interesting. They've got strong opinions. They're a little weird. They love to share. They love to talk about themselves. So it's super fun. And also, like, don't get a lot of fun mail in the mailbox these days. So I thought everyone would enjoy getting a little piece of mail. It's mutually beneficial. Honestly, can't tell who the volunteers are and who the beneficiaries are in this program because it really works both ways. It's great for reducing social isolation, especially for older adults, especially coming out of the pandemic, but also the kids, you know, coming out of the pandemic, coming back to school, there was a lot of catch up to do. And a lot of that was in language arts. So the seniors get fun mail, they get to connect with a younger generation, and the kids get to really work on their communication skills, not just reading and writing, but how to talk and communicate with someone else and get to know someone else. Okay, next slide, please. So how did we launch it? Well, first I reached out to the school, my kids' school, so that was fairly easy. The teacher was interested in it, so we talked closely about how we would get it done and what the ground rules would be. Again, I pulled a lot from what I saw other programs doing. Then we recruited ANV members, mostly through our newsletter. Made sure everyone gave their permission, the school principal, all the parents were asked if this would be okay with them. You know, we were not sharing the children's home addresses. Everything went through the school, so there was like a closed loop on that. Then I had each of our members write a little bio, and then the teacher facilitated the matches. And like a lot of you have mentioned, just reading those bios that people sent in was so interesting. You don't realize the wealth of experiences and like very, I don't know, interesting lives people lead until you see it till they share it. So that was also a great way to get to know some of our members more. Then the teacher had the kids started off with an about me letter to their pen pal, and then that started it all. The letters are exchanged throughout the school year. It's usually once a month, but it really depends again on the school schedule and the classroom schedule. And I personally put a lot of effort into trying to make this a really easy project for the teacher because I know that they are so overwhelmed these days. Next slide, please. Cost, they're just time and coordination, a little bit more in the beginning, then maybe 2 hours a month. In the first year, we only had one class doing it, so it was maybe an hour. Envelopes, supplies, stamps, and then we had an end of the year get together party. Total cost came to about $300. I think this would be something a volunteer could easily do, again, because it's really fun. Next slide, please. The results. So last year was our first year. We had one classroom do it, 4th graders, and 240 letters were exchanged. The teacher and the kids loved it so much, they wanted to continue over the next year. and some matches over the summer. So Campbell Elementary, the school that we partner with, is unique because they loop, which means that the students have the same teacher and the same classmates 2 years in a row, which is very cool. But also means we can continue with the whole same class, same setup for the second year. So we are currently in our second year. Ms. Hogan's 4th grade class is now a 5th grade class. And then I have 2 new teachers this year who are in the 4th grade, and we'll do it again next year. So total, we have about 41 kids paired now, and we're at 660 letters so far this year and counting. Next slide, please. So the results are the feelings about this program have just been glowing from all angles, parents, teachers, kids. They love it. It's super fun. Campbell is a Title I school, and it's located in South Arlington. It's really diverse. The kids come from all different kinds of backgrounds, which is also really interesting. And there are also a wide variety of skill levels with communication skills, writing, reading, all of that. So it's a really wide spectrum of relationships also that have been formed. Some of the kids and their pen pals, it's just very friendly communication. Others have really formed deep friendships where they communicate outside of school with the families. They feel like their pen pal is a grandparent. We just get really, really nice feedback. One of the moms was telling me that this is the favorite thing that their 5th grader has ever done in school. They don't have a grandparent nearby. This is a really important relationship to them. So you can read some of the nice testimonials here. A lot of it talking about the connection with youth and how fun it is. I know I keep saying it's fun, but it's really fun. Next slide, please. And then the teacher, she has been a really strong supporter of this because she sees the difference it makes in the kids' interest in writing and their willingness to sit down and write. Also, their communication skills are improving. She also told me that a few of her really reserved students have opened up to their pen pals and their letters in ways that she hasn't seen before. She's learned things about the kids from their letters that they have not shared in school. So it really does show that, you know, when the match is right and people really hit it off, that there can be really strong bonds formed. And it's really, really rewarding. And it's pretty easy to set up, especially if you have an in at the school. And it's just a great program. I can answer Abby's, last slide. This is at our get together at the end of the year. Last year, we invited all the pen pals to meet outside for lemonade and cookies. And it was really fun to meet in person.
That is so sweet. So I want to, you guys were, Abby and Noelle, you were really good sports for letting me switch it up at the end, but I just thought that would be a fun way when I realized that Noelle had some fun slides to share. I thought that would just be a nice uplifting way to end this. And I think because it is 11:09, we need to save questions. Abby and Noelle, you'll be in the same breakout, so I hope we can continue the conversation. But what we'll do now is what I'm going to do is turn it over to Mary Ellis Bowler, who's going to explain the breakouts, and then we can move on in there. We're going to take a 10-minute break. I think we all need a little break. Get a cup of Joe or check your messages, but please come back, because I think that will give us, if we come back in like 7 minutes, 11:17, 11:18, and continue the conversation for another 40 minutes. I think it'll be well worth it. So here up on the slide is the layout of who will be in which breakout session. You'll see Doug, Leo, and Kate in the first one, Kianyafo, Abby, and Noelle in the second breakout. And because we haven't done this in a while, when we come together for a wave meeting, like back in the old days, we would all go into our breakouts and talk about what issue we were, and just, what are you dealing with? I need help with this topic, or I need some input. So we want to set aside some space for that as well. So if you feel that you need to focus on something different, the problem of the day breakout will be for you. So folks can choose whichever breakout. I think we can move from one to another, but I'm just going to shut up and let Mary Ellis explain it a little better than I can. And we hope to see you shortly in a breakout.
Thanks, Seal.